Hello, friends and enemies. Today we have another book discussion. If you're new to this channel, I normally talk about goth music from Latin America or made by Latinos, but I do occasionally talk about relevant books or other media if it is in some way dark alternative. Once again, if it's either from Latin America or made by Latinos. The book in question is Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado, a collection of short stories. Machado is from the US, but she is a Latina, so she still counts here. She also recently came out with a book called In the Dream House, but I have not been able to read it yet because the waiting list for the library is a few months long. Starting September this year, she will also be releasing a limited-run horror comic series, The Lolo Woods, through Hill House Comics, which I'm also interested to see. A little note for all of you, though I have read Her Body and Other Parties in the past, I do not own it, so I listen to it on audio using the Libby app. No, they're not sponsoring me or anything, I'm just trying to help you out right now, as at my point of recording this, many people are still closed up in their homes, and bookstores and libraries are still mostly closed themselves. Back to the book. What is it about? As I mentioned, it is a collection of short stories that are all totally disconnected from each other. Genre-wise, I would describe it as horror, some fantasy-leaning, some psychological horror, but with most have some sort of magical realism or body horror element. Also, the lead characters are all women, and like the author, most are in some way non-heterosexual, though in what way specifically depends on the story. There is a strong sense of feminist themes in most of the stories. As per the title, most of the stories in some way revolve the main character's relationship with her body and others' relationships with it as well. This includes unhappiness with one's appearance and desire to change, reaction to external objectification, and even disconnection to one's own mind due to mental illness. For the most part, the stories involve some sort of fantastical element to serve as a symbol for something else, though they are all still otherwise somewhat realistic feeling in terms of setting, either in the past or present day. The most unrealistic at the time of coming out was probably the not-so-distant future pandemic story, but now that feels the most realistic and relatable. Meanwhile, the one that was the most realistic in terms of how it was written was the one about her being a resident author on a college campus, and now that's the most unrealistic and least relatable because no one's on any college campus. Funny how that works out sometimes. I'm trying to avoid giving any synopses right now because they are short stories, and with short stories sometimes you give any information and it all serves as a huge spoiler. I mean, the first time I went through this book, I had 3 of the stories spoiled for me, which is about half of them. Below, I will have links to the 2 publicly available stories in this book, which are The Husband Stitch and 8 Bites. If you find those 2 stories engaging, you'll probably enjoy all of them. Even though the stories are all disconnected from each other, they are for the most part similar in genre and the feeling they invoke in the reader. I suppose I should put a little warning here. There are many visceral descriptions in the stories that involve in some way pregnancy, sex, medical procedures, physical illness, disordered eating, body dysmorphia, sexual harassment and assault, trauma, dissociation, social ostracization, death, and that's just the realistic stuff. Without giving things away, there's some more fantastical body horror happenings in a few of the stories as well. If that sort of thing is not for you, that is totally fine. I don't judge you. However, if you can handle those things and the stories sound interesting, I invite you to dive into this book in whatever format is available to you. Hopefully, these references I'm making to the pandemic will deem this video very outdated quite soon, but probably not as soon as I'd like. If that's still the case when you see this, keep in mind that I do have a whole channel here full of videos for you to watch while you have nothing else to do, as well as more coming in the next few weeks. So, and most of them are pretty short individually, so you won't have to pay attention, but there's a lot of them. And if you want more from me, you can also follow me on my various social media accounts, which will be linked below underneath Carmen Maria Machado's social media accounts, which will be linked underneath her stories that I mentioned. If you decide that you like her stuff and you want to follow her everywhere the way I have. Anyways, may your today be cheerful. Have a nice little spooky people raining down upon your life. Bye now.